Chapter, and I call the Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with your permission, I wish to make a statement to the Assembly regarding Northern Ireland's first overarching environment strategy. There is no exaggeration to say that never before have we faced such environmental challenges as those which confront us today. On a global scale, our world is under unprecedented pressure from population growth, the impact of fossil fuels and unsustainable living. The impacts of climate change, such as rising sea levels, droughts and wildfires, pose a real risk to our communities and livelihoods across the world. Locally, our environment is under threat from pollution in its many forms, and action is required if we are to realistically respond to the challenges of climate change, the destruction of habitats, the loss of biodiversity, and impacts of pollution on land and at sea, including plastic pollution. Meeting and dealing with these challenges is something that can only be achieved through global cooperation in tandem with local grassroots initiatives. We all have a responsibility in meeting these challenges, and it is incumbent on all of us to protect and preserve our local environment as we strive to protect and preserve our planet for future generations. Against this background, I am delighted to say that following executive endorsement, I will be launching a formal public consultation on a draft environment strategy for Northern Ireland on Thursday, 11th of November. The strategy sets out a vision for the future of Northern Ireland's environment and the Executive's role in dealing with the challenges we face. I intend to adopt the final version of the strategy as Northern Ireland's first environmental improvement plan under the UK Environment Bill. As I will be outlining to members shortly, on behalf of the Executive, DAERA is leading and developing the overarching multi-decade green growth strategy. The environment strategy is intended to be a key document setting out Northern Ireland's environmental priorities for the coming decades and will be a key pillar in the delivery of green growth. I am also planning to consult shortly on a future agricultural policy framework, which will have environmental sustainability as one of its key outcomes. Furthermore, subject to executive approval, the Minister for Economy plans to launch a new energy strategy before the end of 2021, which will outline the path to achieving a net-zero carbon energy in a way that is clean, secure and affordable. Taken together with these key strategies, show the commitment of myself and executive colleagues to a future which addresses our significant climate and nature challenges whilst facilitating sustainable economic progress. The environment strategy itself includes a mix of both existing and new environmental targets and objectives for all of Northern Ireland's departments, with a role in improving the environment. The strategy links into the longer-term strategic objectives in our developing programme for government and aims to build on work that has been done across a wide range of policy areas, taking as its starting point the commitment contained within the draft outcome: we live and work sustainably, protecting the environment. Key aspects that we will want to include clean air, clean water and healthy soil, and beautiful places to visit and enjoy, which benefit both our physical and mental health. This strategy will provide a coherent response to the global challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss, to be addressed by the Convention on Biodiversity COP15 conference in 2022 and COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow, which, as we are all aware, is currently bringing international parties together to accelerate action on climate change. My time at COP26 has confirmed to me that climate change and biodiversity loss are inextricably linked. The evidence is clear that the state of our natural environment and its capacity to sustain us has been compromised. We are part of the natural environment and have a significant vested interest in accelerating policy and action to safeguard and restore our nature and biodiversity for the health and prosperity of current and future generations. And as shown at COP26, our resilience in Northern Ireland's natural capital and ecosystems to provide nature-based solutions cannot be overstated. We need to protect and invest in nature now to start reaping the benefits and avoid the much higher costs of habitat loss and restoration. If we leave it until later to act, we need to act now. I am committed to delivering for nature and climate and recognise the importance of meeting COP26 commitments and those emerging from next year's COP15 on biodiversity. Northern Ireland faces a range of local environmental challenges, including habitat and species loss, agricultural greenhouse gas emissions, climate change, waste management, the development of a circular economy, soil quality, air quality and waste crime. In addition, the United Kingdom's withdrawal from the European Union has provided new environmental opportunities, and as environmental degradation poses an increasing challenge to all parts of the globe, there is a clear impetus for the first long-term, overarching environmental strategy for Northern Ireland. In the last decade, we have made some notable advances in tackling environmental issues. Perhaps foremost in the public's mind would be the successful introduction of the carrier bag levy and the remarkable rise in our household recycling rates to 50% in 2019-2020. However, it is clear to everyone, not least myself, that more needs to be done, and with urgency. Northern Ireland's first environment strategy will form the basis for a coherent and effective set of interventions that can deliver real improvements in the quality of our environment and thereby improve the health and well-being of all who live and work here, create opportunities to develop our economy, elevate Northern Ireland to an environmental leader, and enable us to play our part in protecting the global environment for many decades to come. This strategy sets out 6 strategic environmental outcomes, which encompass all of the main environmental challenges we will face in the coming decades. 1. Excellent air, land and neighbourhood quality. 2. A healthy and accessible environment and landscape everyone can connect with and enjoy. 3. Thriving, resilient and connected nature and wildlife. 4. Sustainable production and consumption on land and at sea. 5. Zero waste and a highly developed circular economy. And 6. A fair contribution to UK's net zero greenhouse gas emissions and improved climate resilience and adaptability. These outcomes will form the basis of how Northern Ireland faces up to the challenges of improving our environment and our ability to connect with, understand and enjoy the environment in a responsible way. They provide us with a framework to foster environmental awareness and engagement through education and to live in harmony with our environment that provides us with a home, a livelihood and somewhere to relax. And in short, the strategy is a guide on how we can preserve, protect and improve our environment for our children and our grandchildren. Within the framework of the 6 key outcomes of the strategy includes many concrete actions. The following examples give just a flavour of them. Protecting 30% of our land and water for nature by 2030. Conserving or restoring all of our semi-natural peatlands to healthy, functioning ecosystems by 2040. Publishing the final river basin management plans next year. Increasing the highly successful carrier bag levy to 25p. Increasing the maximum fine for littering to £200 and applying for DAERA to become the world's first eco-department. The strategy will be an open-ended, living document that will be supported by a series of action plans, and there will, of course, be costs associated with many of the proposed actions to achieve the critical outcomes, which will require adequate funding through a variety of mechanisms. I and my executive colleagues will work to ensure that Northern Ireland has the necessary resources to tackle the significant environmental challenges that we face. It is a truism that we cannot make the necessary urgent progress on the environment alone, and my officials have been working with key stakeholders, including other departments and external bodies, to develop the premise that a better environment can provide great economic, social and health benefits for individuals and for society, and to outline a pathway to realising these benefits. I look forward to that engagement continuing during the course of the consultation and beyond as we move to implement the final strategy. The launch of the draft strategy will not be the first public engagement in relation to an environment strategy. My department previously launched a call for evidence by way of a public discussion document in September 2019. The level of public interest in the environment was evidenced by the fact that at the end of the extended discussion period in February 2020, no fewer than 2,500 stakeholder responses have been received. And as I mentioned at the start of my statement, my executive colleagues have approved my intention to designate the final version of the strategy as Northern Ireland's first environmental improvement plan under the UK Environment Bill. The bill defines an EIP as a plan for significantly improving the natural environment, and subject to Assembly approval, will require DAERA and the other NI departments to set out the steps they intend to take to improve the natural environment. Adopting the strategy as Northern Ireland's first EIP will give it legal underpinning, meaning there will be a statutory requirement for ongoing reporting and monitoring against the targets and objectives on an annual basis. And as we emerge into the post-COVID-19 world outside of the European Union, more than ever, we need to be prepared to face the environmental challenges of tomorrow today. Every one of us, collectively and individually, has an important role in how we manage, preserve and protect our local environment. And if we all play our part and are ambitious with our plans, we can make a thriving, sustainable environment a reality here and demonstrate leadership on this crucial issue. The environment strategy aims to focus on ambitious outcomes for the big environmental issues facing us that will make a difference to the lives and well-beings of current and future generations. I believe that the strategy I am consulting on is ambitious in both its breadth and depth, containing about 50 key actions and targets with timescales between 2022 and 2050. Our environment affects every aspect of our existence. It is central to all life. What we do, what we eat, how we work, where we live and play. It is unquestionably our most precious asset. This strategy sets out plans for protecting our local environment by making sustainable living central to every aspect of our lives in the coming decades. As I said at the outset of my statement, the environment strategy will be a key pillar of green growth, and I commend it to you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And thank you, Minister, for that. And I call Dagna McAleer.
Graham, and I thank the Minister for his statement this morning. Minister, in paragraph 12 of your statement, you made reference to waste crime and waste management. And regardless of the fact that we have two jurisdictions on this island, we do live in the one single epidemiological island. And we know that other elements of our environment, such as water and air, know no boundaries. Could the Minister outline to us what all island aspects has been incorporated into this strategy?
Well, in terms of all island, I think it's incredibly important that people actually work together in terms of how they manage things, and they also work together in ensuring that they crack down on people who engage in criminality. And if I go back to my period as Environment Minister in 2009 to 2011, I was working then with Ministerial colleagues in the Irish Republic to ensure that the waste, for example, that came to Northern Ireland by criminals was actually repatriated. So it was something of a shock whenever I came back to this department to find that that had not been progressed. So a number of the landfill sites had been cleared, the illegal sites, but a lot of that waste still hadn't been repatriated. So I've raised this issue on quite a number of occasions with my colleagues in the Republic of Ireland, and it is still an issue that hasn't been resolved. So I think the member is absolutely right. We do need to see a better spirit of cooperation on these issues. And I would encourage colleagues across the border to engage in that spirit of cooperation on this issue.
Deborah Erskine.
Speaker, I want to thank the Minister for his statement. An issue that is prevalent in my constituency is ensuring clean and clear waterways, and I'm sure the Minister would agree that it's important that we protect the ecosystems that exist in the likes of the Loch Earn. Minister, given that water quality is one of the 6 strategic outcomes in this document, would you agree that more needs to be done to stop untreated sewage entering our waterways and causing pollution?
The member is right, and of course she represents a particularly beautiful part of Northern Ireland, and the two lochs, the upper and lower Loch Earn, are very precious assets, not just to County Fermanagh, but to all of us. And therefore the protection of facilities such as, not exclusively, but such as the water bodies in Fermanagh is something which is critically important. And certainly we have a sewage infrastructure which has been challenged as a consequence of much of that being linked to the waste infrastructure being linked to the storm infrastructure in many areas. And the consequence of that is whenever we get the heavy rains, then the storm water goes into the sewage, and that ends up in a water body untreated somewhere. So it is incumbent upon Northern Ireland Water to continue with a programme that will actually deal with those areas, and the sensitive areas, of course, should be dealt with first. But it is a critical issue, and it's one that requires investment. So we're going to require significant capital investment for our environment over the course of the next number of years. And the member has identified some, which it won't be led by my department, but something certainly monitored by my department, and we as a department will be seeking to ensure that Northern Ireland Water do take the actions that will avoid the circumstances described by the member.
I call Patsy McGlone, Airmar Patsy McGlone.
And I thank the Minister for the presentation of the statement here today. Just specifically with regard to paragraph 17, the 6 key outcomes, the strategy includes many concrete actions. I would suggest that maybe the bullet points aren't specifically actions, they're more suggested directions. Could the Minister give us some example of, in relation to protecting 30% of our land and water for nature by 2030, specifically what that means, how that's likely to be done, please?
Okay, so we do have a very long series of actions. So, for example, connecting to the environment, landscapes, seascapes and natural beauty. By 2025, we want 110 internationally awarded green and blue sites. By 2027, we want to develop long-term strategic ways for the management, planning, enhancement and protection of our landscapes and seascapes. On water, marine and coastal water resources, by 2022, publish the final river basin management plans, and the member will know how important that is because of all of the rivers feeding into Lough Neagh in his constituency. And by 2027, 70% of water bodies at good status. And by 2031, reduce nutrient surplus in soils and achieve sustainable management of water and soils. I could go on. There's a very long list of areas that we want to tackle flowing from this, and action plans. So this is not just something to be gathering dust. There's a whole series of action plans flowing from this.
I call Rosemary Barton.
Thank you, Minister, for your statement. Minister, in paragraph 13, you refer to the remarkable rise in our household recycling rates to over 50% in 2019-20, and then in paragraph 15, under the 6 strategic environmental outcomes, you speak of zero waste and a highly developed circular economy. May I ask what communication you've had with our local councils to try and get their recycling rates up and above 50% to near this 100%?
Well, thank the member for the question, and the councils have played a key role in getting our waste recycling up there, and their cooperation is absolutely essential. So we did set a target of 50% by 2020, and we achieved that ahead of time. I actually set the target when I was previously Environment Minister, and people said we wouldn't do it, but we have done it. And there's a new target for 65%. That is a UK-wide target. I'd actually prefer it to be 70% recycling. And then the rest of waste we will deal as energy from waste. So decisions have to be taken on energy from waste. So, for example, we have a gasification facility in Belfast, in the Harbour Estate. But we will need further facilities or expansion of that facility to ensure that we can continue to tackle that waste that isn't recyclable. And of course, the most important element of waste is that we don't produce it in the first instance. So a lot of the work that we're doing is actually on producer packaging responsibility. So people take responsibility for the packaging that they produce, and that there will be a cost associated to them for producing that waste in the first instance, because all of this waste coming from virgin goods, recycling is a good thing, but it would be better if we had less packaging and less waste to recycle in the first instance. And I think that every company and business needs to take that on board and recognise that what they can to reduce waste needs to be done. I noted that Jeff Bezos was over from Amazon at COP26. Well, perhaps he can take actions other than flying into space, which will really help the environment, which would be by massively reducing the environment as one of the biggest, or reducing packaging as one of the biggest suppliers of virgin packaging in the world.
Call John Blair.
Mr Speaker, thank you, and thank the Minister for the statement. But with all the mentions of circular economy and pledges for zero waste, can I ask, is it not the fact that without a Green New Deal, the UK Government and the various departments represented in this Assembly are struggling, and seriously struggling, to meet their carbon emission target reductions under the Paris Agreement? And ask, therefore, how can the pledge contained in the statement be taken seriously and be treated as credible if there aren't associated with that specific targets and action plans?
I'd agree with the member that they are struggling and will struggle, and therefore we need to be looking at how we set things which are actually achievable and delivering upon it. And therefore, I'm opposed to making aspirational commitments without having any scientific backing. And I'm also very clear that right across the UK and here in Northern Ireland, that if we are to deliver on environment, as opposed to just saying all the nice things about the environment and how committed we are to having a better environment, that will involve real and significant investment. And that real and significant investment will also involve perhaps decisions which displace investment from other places that we're currently investing in. So that's the challenge that faces the executive going forward. It's a challenge that will face a new executive in 2022. And if they're genuinely and truly committed to doing this, then they have to make tough and difficult decisions to make this go forward. And we need to be honest with the public. And there is a cost to the public as well. So if we're going to live in this consumptive society, we need to reduce consumption on things that we don't need, and on the basis of those things that we do need, they need to be produced in a way which is environmentally sustainable.
Call Philip McGuigan.
I was intrigued to read the line in paragraph 12 of the Minister's statement that said withdrawal from the EU has provided new environmental opportunities, when in fact most people would argue that over in Britain, for example, there has been an immediate rollback on environmental practices. Just a couple of weeks ago, for example, we all witnessed the disgusting and shocking sights of English water companies dumping raw sewage into their rivers and their seas. Can I ask the Minister to give a commitment here today that in his strategy that there will be no regression from the environmental standards and practices that we were used to within the EU?
Well, nobody has ever proposed regression, so I'm not sure where the member is introducing regression from. What we have the opportunity to do is to apply environmental practice which is bespoke to the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We're not, up almost on the Arctic Circle in Finland, nor indeed are we in the southern Mediterranean in Greece or Sicily. We're Northern Ireland, and we have our own peculiar aspects of the environment that they don't have, and they have their own peculiar aspects related to the environment that we don't have. And therefore, having something which is EU-wide and policy which is EU-wide is not the best fit to actually manage things at a local level. So we have the opportunity to develop bespoke arrangements for the protection of our environment, for the support of our agricultural community, and for a whole range of other things which we now have the freedom. We're the lawmakers. We're the ones that are responsible to the people that elect us here, and I'm very grateful for that. because I think that we can be much more responsive to the needs of the community in Northern Ireland than a unelected European Commission and a Parliament. I think it's of around 800 people. Maybe wrong on that, but we have only 3 elected members. So we can actually directly respond to the needs of Northern Ireland here in a much better way, and I'm pleased to have that democratic deficit restored here to Northern Ireland.
Paul Frew.
Speaker, given the need to protect and enhance our peatlands for carbon storage, improved water quality, flood mitigation and biodiversity, what steps could executive departments take to ensure these outcomes are achieved?
Well, in all of these things, it won't always be one department. So DAERA is well developed on its peatland strategy and will be published soon. We're looking at the Scottish experience, and uplands play a key role, and the money to deliver those better natural defences will actually be beneficial to the likes of DFI. So if we manage our peatlands better, DFI will spend less money on cleaning water because there's less peaty soils get into the water as a consequence. So peatlands do require better management, and the first element of that is the wetting of the peatlands, and that is responsible for over 50% of the degradation that takes place. Here in Northern Ireland, we haven't seen either the significant harvesting of peatland that we've seen in the Republic of Ireland, and whenever they talk about their 100% net zero, I'm very interested in seeing what they're going to do about peatlands, because they have absolutely devastated the peatlands in their areas, and the carbon that will be being released from that would be huge. So how they undo the damage there will be an interesting thing to watch. In other parts of UK and Great Britain, there will be higher levels of erosion of the peatland, which is actually a bigger challenge. Our raised bogs certainly need to be re-wetted, and we need to ensure that they are those big basins of water, basically, that will support the peatland activity. And we also need to continue to reduce ammonia. So I've taken steps, for example, which is going to take 25% of the ammonia out of the system in terms of low emission spreading equipment, etc. So we need to take further steps to reduce ammonia. And we've been talking to other people in terms of appropriate tree planting close to farms and so forth, which can absorb huge amounts of that material. So we need to take those steps to restore peatlands. They're a particularly important part of our landscape. We need to ensure that in areas that we have the appropriate strip burning, so we don't lose hundreds of hectares at one time. And the appropriate strip burning will help to ensure that in those drier periods that you don't have those accidental fires. So much to do in peatlands, and they're a particularly important element, not so much in the sequestration of carbon, but in reducing the carbon that they're currently emitting, because they have a lot of carbon stored.
I call Anya Murphy.
With Can Collier, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his statement this morning. One of the key areas in the battle against climate change would be addressing the subject of ammonia, and I know he's just previously touched on it in relation to Mr Frew's point. Could you indicate when we will finally see the Department's long-awaited ammonia strategy?
I'm hoping very soon. I've said that before, mind you, but I am genuinely hoping that is very soon. And it is a difficult, tricky one just to get finalised, but we are getting there. I think that in terms of the ammonia emissions, the vast majority of them are coming from agricultural sources. I think around 15% would be coming from pig and poultry. The capacity to actually capture that ammonia is something that I'd be hugely interested in. So obviously, those are houses which have, air conditioning systems in. So if we can filtrate that ammonia into one source and capture that, then can that ammonia be used to produce hydrogen and put into a cracker? It is believed that farm ammonia would be a particularly heavy form of ammonia and therefore be very useful for the shipping sector. So it's how we actually look at things differently, and the ammonia should be looked at as a potential opportunity. Where we can capture it, we should capture it. And where we can't, then we should be looking to nature-based solutions like the appropriate tree planting adjacent to dairy farms, where you would get a lot of the ammonia absorbed into the local environment there. And there is ways to actually tackle these things, and we need to adapt those ways to our particular circumstance in Northern Ireland, where we produce a lot of food and where we want to continue to produce a lot of food.
Call Keith Buchanan.
Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for statement so far. Minister, you referred in your statement regarding the plastic bag levy being increased and obviously then the maximum fine for littering. Obviously, whenever you go around the rural roads, and obviously it's an urban issue as well, the amount of litter is shocking, and it's over COVID was particularly poor. What more can you do to put pressure on councils to emphasise and deal with this issue? Some councils are good at it and some are very, very poor. My own council, to be honest, would not be issuing enough fines, and it's not obviously about issuing fines to everyone, but it's sending out the message and getting people to improve their habits. So what more can you do with local councils?
This is a really difficult one. I actually don't understand it. So, when I'm out walking on my own road, and it's a rural road, and you come across all of these chip papers and fast food outlet papers and Red Bull and all of these things deposited out on the side of the road, and I literally don't understand it. How an education process and young people are taught right from school days, and have been right back to my school days, about the importance of not throwing litter. And yet people still engage in it as if it means nothing. And, give that responsibility to some other person who actually goes out and with a bag and a litter picker and collects it. And it's entirely wrong that people do that. So we can't have council officers driving out in vans pursuing every car to see if they're going to throw litter out, and therein lies a difficulty. And I think a lot of it comes back to producer responsibility, and certainly ensuring that a lot of the stuff that they do produce is biodegradable. So we certainly need to massively reduce the amount of plastic that is involved in production processes. And we need our councils to continue to be strong on litter waste, because it is just an unacceptable part of our society. And most of all, we all need to engage with people in terms of supporting those who collect waste, but also ensuring that message continues to be hammered out there. But there is a hardcore of people who just do not seem to care about our environment, and willy-nilly will just deposit litter as opposed to leaving it in their car to actually get back at home and put it into the appropriate bin.
Call Cara Hunter.
Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his statement this morning. Minister, I'm aware the North has the lowest density of woodland in Europe, with just 8% of our land here being forest. You have committed to the Forests for Our Future initiative. Can you give an update on that initiative? And also recently, at my visit to COP26, I noted the importance of planting seagrass to help reduce carbon. Is that something the Minister and his department are exploring? Thank you.
I think in the first year, Forest for Our Future, and we're aiming for 1.8 million trees every year on average over the course of 10 years. I think we're at 1.2 or 1.3 million. So we didn't hit the 1.8, but it's a very good start from a standing point. For some reason, up until around 2007, we were planting considerably more trees. And then for a period that dropped off fairly significantly. So we have put in a lot of resource, a lot of support, a lot of additional money into Forest Service, who are grant aiding landowners to plant trees, and I believe that ultimately will be a successful project, and I have to commend Forest Service. They are working extremely hard on ensuring its success. In terms of the seagrass, the member does raise a very important issue, and identifying the suitable sites, because I think it needs to be fairly shallow water that you plant seagrass in, and how that impacts upon those who are actually out on our water. So I think it would be something which would be hugely beneficial. It is suggested that for the space that it covers, it can be 35 times greater at capturing carbon than forests. So it is certainly something which we need to be looking, because we're never going to be able to stop producing all carbon, and therefore the sequestration of carbon is critically important in that battle to get to net zero.
I call Steve Aiken.
May I thank the Minister for his statement so far, and also from behalf of our party, we do and welcome the environment strategy as we're coming to as well. Minister, I note very closely when you were talking about it was the push towards waste management and the proof towards recycling and getting towards the sort of the 100% mark as well. One of the things when I was at COP26 last week, I had the opportunity to talk to some of the many local councils who are having really significant problems with waste management, but also in particular with their long-term contracts that they seem to have been tied into in incineration, which has meant that they're trying to get out of those contracts. Has the Minister, when you've been talking to other executive members, have you had a chance to talk to the Infrastructure Minister and ask her to make a decision, particularly on Hightown Incinerator, and get it moving now? Because this is having a detrimental effect on our push to improving of recycling across Northern Ireland.
Well, I thank the member for the question. And all of these things, managing our environment will not always be easy decisions to make. Sometimes it'll be more difficult decisions. And I have been corresponding with the DFI Minister, and I've identified to her very clearly that we need additional capacity to deal with waste which is not recyclable. And therefore a decision does need to be made on energy from waste, and it is for the Infrastructure Minister to make the decisions, because those will be planning decisions. I'm not going to interfere in the process that she has in terms of her decision making and her responsibility, but I will seek to facilitate her in every way in terms of identifying what need exists, and we've done that, and demonstrating to her the importance of an infrastructure which is going to remove waste from landfill. Because going forward, the longer these decisions don't happen, the more waste goes to landfill, the more methane that is produced from landfill. And because it's existing and it's not difficult, because you don't actually have to make that decision, because there's already landfill sites capable of taking this, then the easiest thing is to put this off. But we need to stop putting off decisions and make decisions, and face the public on them, and face the scrutiny of courts on them, because all of these decisions are likely to be JR'd, and we move the country forward on that basis. But we cannot move forward on the basis of paralysis. That just leads to nothing.
Call Andrew Muir.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement. To be honest, I'm rather underwhelmed by what's contained within it. Stuff like renaming the department an eco department doesn't really inspire me, but obviously there's a consultation ahead. One of the key things that's meant to relate to this is the commitment within New Decade New Approach to establish an independent environmental protection agency. Why has that not been established yet?
Well, it's not us renaming the eco department, it's us applying to be an eco department and being the first department in the world that would achieve that. So we shouldn't, denigrate the hard work that people actually put in to developing these types of things, and ensuring that Northern Ireland can be at the forefront and at the cutting edge. In terms of the independent environmental agency, I believe that will be something which we couldn't have moved forward in the period that we had from January 2020 to now, particularly given the background of the COVID crisis, to make those necessary changes that would be required if we were to do such. But that will be for a new Assembly and a new Executive to take forward on the basis of all of the information that's available to them and that will be a choice of that new Assembly and Executive to make.
I call Matthew O'Toole.
Mr Speaker, Minister, I welcome the fact that this statement is happening, but part of the problem in Northern Ireland is that we've had many positive strategies in terms of climate mitigation and the environment over the years, but frankly abysmal delivery. We have a terrible record. We are a laggard, not just in these islands but globally. As I said yesterday, 83% of the targets in our previous biodiversity strategy was missed. Of course, we still don't have a binding climate change legislation, or, as has been mentioned, an environmental protection agency. So, in the spirit, Minister, of getting on the record our actual intentions, can I ask if you accept the IPCC's recommendation of limiting temperature rises to 1.5 degrees? Do you personally agree with that target and Northern Ireland having binding targets to deliver upon it?
Well, the member got to 9 words before his but, and then a series of criticisms of Northern Ireland and running his own country down. But that's up to the member. Not only have am I saying that I want to see the 1.5 degrees, I have committed to the Under 2 coalition, which was established in 2016, and which is now going to rename itself because it was under 2% at that time, but it's now going to go to less than that, which actually represents 57% of the world, and that is regional governments from across Europe, North America, and Asia, all parts of the world basically, who are committed to reducing our carbon and our greenhouse gases and making the environment a better place.
Justin McNulty.
Thank you, Minister, for your statement, and thank you, Minister, for the impetus of the statement. We all need to play our parts in creating a new green society. Minister, the statement lacks vision. It lacks big-ticket items. It lacks blue sky thinking. I'm going to table a suggestion here, Minister. How about we open the canal between Newry and Lough Neagh, reopen the Newry Canal, reconstruct it, refurbish it, revitalise it, rewild it, restock it. Involve infrastructure, involve economy, involve education, involve health. Let's do something brilliant and imaginative and create a rewilded artery through our land. How about that for an idea, Minister?
I would be entirely supportive of reopening the Newry Canal, the Ulster Canal and the Lagan Navigation. I believe that those would be good investments for the future of our country, for tourism, for those linkages north-south. I just think that those would all be hugely beneficial. Unfortunately, it's not my department that drives that, so the question is to the wrong minister. But certainly, if the minister who has the responsibility brings that forward, it is something that I would support. In terms of rewilding, I have to say that if you want to see good practice, and I've recommended and encouraged members across this House before to do it, go to Glenmoray, where they have engaged in qualitative management and where they're doing work on re-wetting the peatlands there, where they've actually raised the numbers of ground nesting birds and improved the biodiversity. And that hasn't been by allowing things to grow wild, because when you let things grow wild, it tends to be briars and thistles and dockins and those type of fern and so forth takes over. Good management will actually ensure that you have a higher level of biodiversity, and that is where we need to aim. And you can't have rewilding and biodiversity together, because you will simply end up losing loads of species if you just abandon things.
Nicola Kimmins.
Cancorla, and I thank the Minister for his statement this morning, and also welcome the comments in relation to the reopening Newry Canal, as last night the Council in Newry Morningdown agreed to open up conversations with ABC Council on that, as they currently have responsibility. So we look forward to that conversation down the line. But Minister, just in relation to the concrete actions that have been mentioned in the statement, there are only 6. Can you outline when we will see the rest of these actions?
It's deliberately 6. So initially, when we looked at it, there was potentially 20. But we decided to actually become much more focused, and that's why we have the 6, and those are key areas that we need to tackle: air quality, water quality, carbon emissions, waste. You know, those are all key actions that will come from environmental strategy. Some other strategies will pick up other issues, and this strategy should not be looked at, you know, on its own. It needs to be looked at in the context of green growth, which we'll speak about shortly. It needs to be looked at in the context of a biodiversity strategy, peatland strategy, ammonia strategy. All of these strategies that we're pulling together will give us an overarching set of strategies which will encompass all of the issues relating to the environment.
I call Mark Durgan.
I thank the Minister for his statement and his answers thus far. The statement rightly, I suppose, recognises the good work that has been done in terms of increasing recycling rates, yet acknowledges that much more must be done on the road to zero waste. Has the Minister, or will the strategy give consideration to the merits of the creation of a single waste authority for Northern Ireland?
This strategy doesn't. It's not something that I'm opposed to. However, we did establish 3 waste organisations. 2 of them have pretty much fell by the wayside. 1 still exists, and I don't think, reflecting on that, it was the greatest success story ever. In going forward, I think that we set very clear targets for councils, and we fully assist the councils to do that. We now have 11 councils. They are larger councils. They are more capable of entering into contracts. They can collaborate with each other, and perhaps it is something which we don't need to force, but you know, the organisations themselves will recognise that through good collaboration that they can move forward. I know that at this moment in time, you know, and Mr. Aiken has pointed it out, that some of them are in ARC 21, for example, and they feel tied to ARC 21 in terms of what it does, and therefore they have been held back by a lack of decisions on what ARC 21 want to do, whilst others may prefer to move on to do something else but feel that they can't. So I think it is for councils who have the responsibility for that side of waste to actually do what's right for their ratepayers and for the wider community at the same time.
I call Kelly Armstrong.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister. It's a very welcome statement this morning. Minister, as you say in paragraph 3, action is required if we are to realistically respond to the challenges of climate change. Could I ask, Minister, where are you with the proposers of the other climate change bill, and how far forward can we get with the bills?
Well, we have engaged with the proposers of the bill. My officials have engaged extensively, but we aren't finding the common ground, and that's unfortunate, because I do think that it is critically important that we find a way through this and that we move forward as an assembly together. I actually don't think that there is a huge disparity across this House in terms of what people want to achieve, and people do want to see, you know, a huge reduction in our greenhouse gases and our carbon emissions, and they want to see us developing means of sequestrating that. And some people want to do it very, very quickly, and others are saying, well, if we do it that quickly, then that's going to have a huge cost associated to it, and we need to actually absorb it a little more slowly. And those are all challenges for this House to eventually arrive at a decision on, and I trust that it will be a decision which is a rounded decision, which is based on qualitative science and will actually deliver on what people promise. Because as a politician, I have never been the type who is over-promised. I'd prefer to under-promise and over-deliver than over-promise and under-deliver. And over the years, the politicians that have come in here over-promising, and I've been around since 1998, seem to have a shorter shelf life than those who tend to be more measured.
Call Claire Bailey.
Thank you. I expect many members in this House have seen the programme, but recently a BBC Spotlight programme looking at the ongoing devastation caused by gold mining in the Sperrin Mountains. Professor Stephen Emmerman claimed, Minister, that, and I think I quote this well, had never interacted with a regulatory agency that is so incompetent as the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. Now, this is a man who has worked with regulatory agencies across the world, in Ecuador, Colombia, Madagascar, Indonesia, but never interacted with a regulatory agency that is so incompetent as the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. So, Minister, how can any of us have any faith with the delivery of these strategies and the direction of travel that they'll get what's expected?
Well, I actually think it's pretty mean of a politician just to denigrate all 900 people that work in the Northern Ireland Environment Agency and that you've no trust in them. And I have to say that there is a lot of very good people in the Northern Ireland Environmental Agency. As a body, I believe that it could work better. I think that at the moment it is too silo-based, and people are specialising in particular areas and sometimes don't see the wider benefit and the necessity to have a bit of give in the area that they're in. But all in all, I'd have to say that the Northern Ireland Environment Agency is made up of people who have specialisms, who have a lot of knowledge in their particular fields of expertise, and that if we ultimately develop an independent environmental agency, who's going to populate that, and where do you think the people who are currently in NIEA go? Because it'll be the same people who you've just been running down.
Speaker, environmental responsibility is indisputably good. However, I am intrigued by paragraph 11 of this statement, where Minister Put says, "I am committed to delivering for nature and climate." Does the Minister now think that he, indeed we, can change the climate?
Well, I do think that we can certainly alter our environment, and I think when God made this place and he looked on it and he said it's very good, he didn't look on oceans that were full of plastic, he didn't look on rivers that were polluted, and he didn't look on air which was full of particles that it shouldn't have. So I would like to try and make this environment very good. I think that would be a good place for all of us to commit to.
And members, that concludes questions on the statement. Members, please take your ease for a moment or two. We move on to the next item on the order paper.